Today's episode is sponsored by Awin. The world's leading brands grow through partnership marketing with Awin Enterprise Technology, AI-powered insights, and expert U.S. regional support. With 30,000 advertisers, 1 million partners worldwide, and more than $20 billion in partner-driven revenue generated last year, Awin helps brands turn partnerships into growth. Learn more at awin.com/US. The future of digital is being written now. Join me at eMarketer's Future of Digital Summit on September 15th at City Winery in New York for a full day of analyst insights, conversation with leaders from top brands like Gotham FC, LG Electronics, Colgate-Palmolive, and Shark Ninja. Plus, networking with senior marketers tackling AI, commerce media, and what's next. Click the registration link in the show notes for tickets. Hi, everyone. Today is Wednesday, August 5th. Welcome to eMarketer's weekly retail show, Reimagining Retail, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Awin. This is the show where we talk about how retail collides with every part of our lives, and I'm your host, Suzy Davidkhanian. On today's episode, we're talking back to school, but this isn't going to be another episode about getting ready for the season. We're already in it. So instead, we're asking a much more practical question. What can retailers and brands still do now to make the most of what's left of the season? Joining me are podcast regulars, Arielle Feger. Hi, Arielle.
Hi, I'm ready to give this an A+ try.
Oh my God, I love that. And Rachel Wolff.
I feel like the pressure is on now for me to do a back to school pun, but I did not come prepared.
I didn't
Well,
either. It wasn't even very good, the one I just said, but
I don't know. I
it's
love
okay.
A++. So we all know that back to school is the second biggest shopping season of the year after the holidays. We're expecting, according to our forecast, that retail sales are expected to reach $85 billion in the US this year. But unlike the holidays, there really isn't one finish line. School calendars vary by region. College students have different needs. We're increasingly seeing shoppers that don't stop shopping when school officially starts. Many families are spreading purchases over the months as they wait for deals. The list goes on. There's school supply lists, and there's simply everybody is trying to discover what they need to get now and save for later. In fact, according to NRF annual study, nearly half of parents say they'll just buy the essentials now to start the year, and then they'll replenish as they need. So while much of the planning happened 6 months ago, there still seems to be some levers marketers can pull now. Many shoppers are still waiting for those deals. Others are filling in the gaps. So today isn't about planning for back to school. It's much more about how do you make the most of the season. So before we jump in, you guys tell me, what's one back to school season moment, maybe an ad or a campaign or a merchandising idea that you've seen so far that you've thought, hey, that's clever. I'm going to start because you guys didn't know this question was coming. And the
Frantic
reason
Googling begins.
I know, right?
the reason I wanted to ask you that because we are in season. It is very difficult to make a big game changer, but it's also nice to see some ideas. And I was listening to my Google Home and there was an ad for Whole Foods. I've never heard an ad for Whole Foods, never mind on like a podcast. And it was all about how they do all the work of figuring out what the ingredients are so that there are no dyes and no bad things in the deli meats so that parents can spend more time making lunches and doing other things that are more important. And I thought, wow, that's so clever. Talk about an unexpected sort of category to come up for back to school ads.
I have a
Arielle, what do you have?
Yeah, I have a similar one actually. And it's kind of similar to maybe something we'll be talking about a little later, but I heard an ad on a podcast also for a pillow and bedding company. Unfortunately, I don't remember the brand name, but I thought it was a really good opportunity for a category where it's not like pencils or pens or, notebooks. It's not necessarily something you think about when you think back to school, but it was, the season's coming up. You want to make sure your kids are getting the rest that they need. And I thought it was just a really thoughtful way to kind of incorporate the brand into, the back to school season.
Yeah, the one that immediately came to mind for me was, I don't know about you, but I'm still going through a World Cup withdrawal.
Oh, yes.
And
Same.
American Eagle announced a partnership with Lamine Yamal, one of the stars of the Spanish soccer team, and he's going to be a big part of their back to school campaigns. And, again, as somebody who is, mourning the loss of World Cup content, this was right up my alley. But I also think it's a good way to leverage, what was the event of the summer and, keep that attention on you as a
I
Yeah,
brand.
love
that's
it.
really smart.
So back to our what do you do now? So I thought instead of our usual, we could do some segments. With the first one is about the pie. So everyone is focusing on back to school shopping over the longer period, but we all know that after folks go back to school, students go back to school, they're almost always asking their parents for something else. There's like this second wave. They see something, there's like some FOMO happening. They see their friends wearing something, they're on social, they see something they didn't even know that they needed. And now here's another shopping trip. So if you imagine all of that post first day spending in one pie, and you have to divide the pie by 100 using percents, how would you divide it? These are the categories. Which gets the biggest slice of the pie? The categories are sneakers, apparel, beauty and personal care, backpacks, or because I also prefer a wild card, I'm giving you a wild card. So sneakers, apparels, beauty and personal care, or backpacks, or give me another category. What do you think? Rachel, let's start with you.
So, okay. So I would say apparel is probably the big one because you don't really know what people are going to show up to school wearing. And then once you get there, you're like, oh, that looks really cool. I want that. Or like, oh, there's this brand that I need to have. So I feel like for me, that would be about half of my pie. But another category that I think is pretty big would be beauty and personal care because, from my perspective on the retail and e-commerce briefing, we've written so much about Gen Alpha and their beauty habits and how those are, crossing gender lines and how, kids have their own like 10-step beauty routines. And so also from a FOMO perspective, there is a lot of exchange that's happening in schools. And I think that would be one area where, kids are just going to want to build their shelves, so to speak. As for a wild card category, I was just trying to think like what category would a Stanley Cup fall into, or like that sort of accessory that becomes the must-have, or like a Labubu, which
Mhm.
I guess is more of a toy. But those sort of like miscellaneous,
Like
like
lunch
fun,
and yeah,
right? Like accessory type categories that are a big marker of social status that kids just have to have if you want to be cool, and every kid wants to be cool.
I love that. So nothing from a supply list that a parent bought a private label for.
Right. I feel like, the backpacks and the sneakers, those are bigger purchases that you would make in the lead up to the
Okay.
school year and maybe not as much in the early days.
Arielle, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like Rachel and I are thinking along kind of similar lines. I think apparel would be kind of the biggest chunk. You go, I do remember like the emphasis on the first day of school outfit, but again, like you go in, you see what everyone else is wearing, you want that, you want this. So I think that that would get a pretty big, post first day bump. Similar, beauty and personal care again you're like, oh, I really like what you're wearing, or your friend tells you about this new skincare routine that she's doing, and so I think that would also receive a pretty big bump. And then sneakers and backpacks, I think there might be some residual buying after the fact, but I was wondering about where tech falls into this, consumer electronics or tech. I think obviously those would probably be a lot of purchases you're making before the school year, but I'm sure there is an opportunity to see is there something you're going to need that's different this year, or do you need an upgrade on your laptop? So I don't know. I don't know if that would be a big bump, but I do wonder about what that could look like.
Yeah. For me, this bump is about literally the FOMO, like the things you see other kids. So it could include sneakers, right? Someone's
Yeah.
wearing a pair of sneakers that you're like, oh my God, I have to have that. And all of a sudden you're going home and you're telling your parents, oh my God, I must have that. It's like this big want. And I'm wondering, as retailers and brands are thinking about that now, do they lean into that idea more and use TikTok maybe? Like, is this second wave of purchasing happening that is not the mandatory things, but the visible, the truly visible, like you said, Rachel, the statusy sort of items? Is that even more bigger now because of TikTok and other social platforms?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think that's having an impact. Because again, not only are you just seeing what people are wearing, at your school, but you're seeing what kids are wearing and using throughout the entire world. It just opens up a big window for you to kind of discover more things. And I think that's bound to have a big influence on, those like, impulse or I want purchases rather than the have to haves.
And I think also it speaks to the way that purchasing decisions have shifted, right? I think like when I was a kid, I feel like it was just my parents picking out what I would wear and, the school supplies and that sort of thing. Whereas, with social media, with all these new influences, I feel like the kids themselves have a much bigger say in what they're wearing, what their parents are buying for back to school.
It's true, which kind of brings us to the next segment, which is what would you do? So, not every brand, like we just said, not every brand is part of a school supply list. Not every brand is a must have. But it doesn't mean that you can't win during the back to school season. So, now I want you to imagine that you're the CM of a brand that isn't an obvious back to school player, like, I don't know, Sephora. Maybe it's obvious now. I'm not sure. Pick a brand or a category. Tell us what that is, of course, and then tell us what would you do. And I selected three plays, if you will. But if one of these don't match what you would do with your brand or retailer, then you get a wild card. So own the moment. This is what I think of when I think of some of the higher price points where they do talk about picture day or first day of school, or depending on the category, maybe it's about moving in day and making the dorm feel yours or study nights. So own the moment, number one. Number two, win the student. Rachel, to your point, sometimes you have to win the parent through the kid. So, how do you think about the socials, the creators, the peer influencers, maybe word of mouth to try and get that to happen as a brand? Or number three, borrow an audience. Sometimes you need to partner with a different brand or you need to do pop-ups. Or I'm thinking about, some of those big box brands that do the um the pop-ups at campuses and like the trucks where like the, once upon a time brand comes to your small village college town to show you all of their wares and you maybe make a purchase. So like how do you borrow the audience in a moment that is not obviously yours? Aria, let's start with you. What's your
Yeah.
brand and what are you going to do?
So I was thinking about like a Johnson and Johnson or kind of a CPG consumer health wellness kind of products like Band-Aids or hand sanitizer or first aid kits. Um, I think those, I mean, maybe to some people that might be obvious, but maybe to some people it wouldn't be obvious. And so I was thinking, okay, like what would I want to do? And I think, I would really, this is really basic, but I would just really double down on my retailer partnerships, particularly with a CVS, with a Walgreens, and kind of create those like first, school survival kits, and really just focus on putting together all of the products that people will need. I'm a big believer in a one-stop shop. So here is all of the things that you can grab to just make sure that, your kid is safe and healthy and, protected throughout the year. I know, again, it's a little bit basic, but I'm really thinking, that's what it's all about is just putting it in front of people and making it easy.
I don't know where you went to school, but I didn't have a survival kit. I don't know. Did I miss out?
No, I mean, I didn't. I mean, I think, when I went to college, I probably went with a first aid kit, but maybe I'm just thinking a lot about safety. And
I
I mean,
don't.
their school nurses have a lot of products as well, but I'm thinking, for home or, on the go, you
I,
need
yeah,
that
well, it's a
Band-Aid.
yeah, I think, basically what I'm hearing is that almost every category can find a back to school moment. And there are some quick wins that you could do right now, which is things like partner with a retailer and maybe have a really good merchandising strategy and
Yeah.
this, bundling. And so you're offering value and you're getting all the things you need. Make it as easy as you can for me.
Yes, that is
Cool.
the goal.
I love it. Rachel, what about you?
So I was thinking a little bit more generally. Like I didn't have a specific company like Johnson& Johnson in mind, but I was thinking about like particularly winning the student, which relates back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that kids are playing a bigger role in these decisions. I think PwC had this great stat of 61% of parents plan to let their kids add items directly to their online carts, right? So again, you need to get in front of this audience. And how do you do that? One strategy I would suggest is TikTok Shop, right? I mean, this is an area where we know that kids are engaged, they're spending time, and it's also a great avenue to drive impulse purchases, which it feels like a lot of these kid-driven purchases tend to be. I mean, it's like you see something and you want to have it. And I think TikTok Shop is sort of the perfect avenue for that. And I was reading, I think it was Ulta, going back to the idea of, how do beauty brands win in this environment. And Ulta partnered with PacSun, but that particular product will be available not exclusively, but on TikTok Shop in addition to being sold in store and online. So again, just broadening those channels and making sure that you're present where this discovery is happening, but also when they go into the store.
I love that. Meet the shoppers where they are. And some of these, yes, you need to think about it 6 months in advance, but some of these things you can just shift some of your dollars now and move some of your inventory around so that you can capture the consumer where they are. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the playbooks, let's get really tactical. Let's talk about some of the opportunities that are in season. I'm going to give you some classic tactics, and I want you to tell me if you would double down, cut them all together, or if you just adjust them since we're in the middle of the season right now. The first one is BOGO, buy one, get one, promotions, student discounts, anything that screams value. I mean, there's some very specific to back to school. What do you do, Arielle? Do you cut it? Do you keep it and double down, or do you adjust to some other sort of messaging?
So I'm like kind of in between, like double down, adjust a little bit. I think again, anything that is going to promote value is going to be, helpful. I am really like pro bundles. I think that could be really interesting because maybe you don't need two exact sets of the same thing, but you need multiple different things within a single brand, like Crayola or whatever. So I think that could be really interesting. I also think it could be cool to like have some cross age BOGOs, some different schools. Obviously, I saw some data from Optimove that was, nearly half of respondents are shopping for back to school supplies for like two children. And a
Mhm.
lot of times those children aren't necessarily in the same grade or even, kind of category of school, high school, middle school, et cetera. So I think that would be cool to kind of create some more opportunity within those things.
Rachel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp as Ariel, where I think, these promotions are important, but how you get them across is has to be adjusted a little bit, especially because I feel like it's just been a like one long stream of promotions, right? Like we just had Prime Day and now you're heading into back to school and people are being faced with so many different types of discounts. So I think having maybe a simplified promotional strategy instead of like having all of these different tactics and all these different BOGOs and discounts and coupons and that sort of thing, and just keeping it easy for consumers to understand would go a long way.
But we agree value matters. And
Yep.
so figuring out the right way to position value, and that's something you can switch pretty easily in season. My next question is more on the merchandising side. Often retailers have this like one-stop shopping experience where they have hero displays, these like complete the list little posters, these like check marks to try and really make it easier. What do you think, Rachel? Double down, cut them out completely, or just adjust them a little?
I I was leaning more on the lines of cut them out. I mean, I can understand once the shopper is in the store why you might want to guide them in that particular way, but I think in terms of messaging, right? Like, and as far as one-stop shopping goes, it's really companies like Amazon and Walmart that own that one-stop shop experience. So, maybe you want to find a different way of framing yourself to differentiate yourself and, keep consumers from remembering that you can get something in 30 minutes maybe from Amazon as opposed to going to your store.
So interesting. Arielle, what do you think? Anything
Yeah, I'm
different
on
to
the
add?
yeah, I'm on the opposite side of this. I am doubling down.
Me
As
too.
I said, I am a one-stop shop fan. I love when I can just grab things from the shelf and say, okay, I'm done, 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 done. I think, Rachel definitely brings up a really good point that like Amazon and Walmart definitely own that you can buy everything you need. But in store, Walmart obviously has physical stores. Amazon doesn't really. I think in store is really still very powerful, and to be able to just make it again easy where you can just check a whole thing off your list of, okay, we got it all, and I didn't have to go searching around the entire store. I think that can be really useful.
Also, it could be like the first day of school outfit where it's all merchandise
Mhm.
together, sort of like a Primark versus, so not always just about school supplies. Tell me, what do you
Yes,
guys think about the messaging around being dorm ready? So it's a different version of bundles and pop-ups and move in and like make friends look cool kind of messaging.
I
Ariel.
like it. Yeah, I think it's cool. I especially love kind of the more pop-up-y things. I think as kids get older, they're forming more of their brand affinities. They have more particular interests, and I think a brand kind of working on a pop-up to kind of appeal to those interests is really smart. And I think again, partnering with colleges, again, being able for, once the kids move in to still be able to, buy the things that they want to buy or discover new things. I think it's smart.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't have our forecast in front of us, but I think we do project that college back to school spending is going to grow faster than K to 12, which I think speaks to the fact that, getting your dorm room ready has become such a big part of the college experience. And so if you as a brand can get in on that early enough, then as Ariel said, you have that ability to build long-term loyalty. And I think that is really important. So I would say double down on that.
Cool. I'm going to ask you one more. All these other tactics, I mean, it's a different word, get ready for dorms, but it's still about value and removing friction. Tell me what you guys think about tax-free weekends. So most of those we've already missed, but they are a back to school staple. What do you do? Do you keep doing that for next year?
I think
Rachel.
absolutely. Another stat that I came across from Deloitte was that about 31% of parents, are define themselves or are hyper value seekers, which means that they have like four or more different tactics for saving money. But among those hyper value seekers, they plan to spend 14% more, right? So if you really double down on that value messaging, lean on, tax-free holidays and opportunities that make it seem like people can save money, you could actually end up earning more sales than you initially anticipated.
I agree. And I also think this is a really interesting opportunity for marketing departments, being able to hyper localize the messaging to the states that are, doing the tax-free holidays. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really highlight that. I mean, I'm sure most families already are aware of them, but I still think that there's an opportunity to really show, here's what we have, here's when it is, and here's the value you get out of it.
Yeah, and I think the closer that you get to the actual start of the school year, I feel like in a way the less organized parents get, right? And so if you can get in front of them with that messaging and say, look, this day, do all your shopping on this day, I feel like that could be really impactful.
And it does create a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Really quick, if you're the CMO of a classic back to school brand, what's the one move you're making in the next couple of weeks to make the most of what's left in the season? In 1 minute or less, what's your move, Rachel?
So my move is to run campaigns on on-demand delivery platforms like Instacart, DoorDash, or Uber, because again, if you're really crunched for time, if you don't have the bandwidth to run to the store, then these platforms are there for you. They can get things to your door in 30 minutes or less in many cases.
I love that. Arielle.
I'm going to say get on Reddit. I think Reddit has been a really valuable tool for consumers who are comparing products, researching products. And I think, obviously these brands have high brand awareness, but maybe when you get down into the more comparative thing, you might be losing some customers. So there might be some opportunities as consumers are trying to make decisions on which brands to buy and what products.
That's all the time we have for today. There's so much to talk about. The shopping journeys are changing. The season is changing. There's so many new tactics. But unfortunately, we have to end here. But one thing we can all agree on is that really there are different things you can do in season to try and impact your sales. Thanks so much, Arielle.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm already planning my first day outfit.
Oh my God, I love it. First day outfit for back to the office.
Monday in the office.
And thank you to our listeners and to our team that edits the podcast. Please leave a rating or review and remember to subscribe. I'll see you for more Reimagining Retail next Wednesday. And on Friday, join Marcus for another episode of Behind the Numbers, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Awin.